Welcome back. Figure we go over some tire balancing basics. So this is how I do it, but not necessarily how you would do it or how the proper way to do it is, but this is how I do it and it works. So I've tested my balancing on this little rig here, which I'll go over briefly in a moment, up to over 100 miles an hour. And so well over that sometimes. And so, yeah, no vibration problem, nothing like that. So let's go over the balancer as far as how it works and so forth. And then we'll take it from there. Okay, so there's two basic ways to balance a motorcycle tire that I know of at least. And this is one of the two ways. This is a static balancer. So a static balancer doesn't apply any outside forces to the tire. In other words, just spin the tire and then determine which side is heavier based on centrifugal force. So what this guy simply does is utilize Sir Isaac Newton, and when you put it on here, the heavier side of the tire is going to find its lowest point on that rotation, on that circumference, or in this case a radius, because we're talking about the center of the hub down. And then once we get to that point where it settles in, we know that's the heavier side of the tire. And then we simply apply weights generally opposite of that heavier spot to accommodate for that. So I'll go over a couple of the features about these typical type of static balancers first. Let me do that right now. This is a Black Widow brand. It doesn't really matter what brand you have. I have mine a little bit set up differently for a wider tire. I know it's not really supposed to be done that way, but when you put like a Concourse 14 rear tire on this or similar, even when you remove these guys here, it's just too narrow. So I've done this many times and it works out fine, so I just kind of leave it this way. So, it may not be right, it may not be wrong, but that's the way I do it. So basically, this is what we got. Now, the parts of this thing. This is the part that you're actually going to do the balancing with, okay? It has a couple of nice roller bearings up here, which you need to keep clean and lubricated. And then you want to keep the shaft, you said shaft, the shaft free of any burrs, significant burrs, anything at all. That's going to kind of be rough when it goes over these spots here. So I usually check it before I use it, run a little bit of 1500 sandpaper over it or whatever I need to do. Now these here are not for balancing, okay? So these are actually for if you have a spoked wheel or any other type of wheel that you want to check for trueness. It'd be very difficult to check for trueness on something like this because it can move laterally, right? So these guys will keep a wheel, firmly planted in the center or wherever you put it on this particular rig because of the screw, jacking the screws in against the bearings. And then, so it's not spinning on these guys, it's spinning on the actual wheel bearings. So if you're going to true the wheel, then, that's how you do that. And I almost forgot to mention that this is the fixed reference that you would rotate in. It has an adjuster on it so you can change the height and so forth to go up against a rim. So you need some sort of a fixed reference. So when you spin a rim, you can actually see it moving relative to the fixed reference. So that's what this guy is here. We are just going to go ahead and turn that out of the way and just get it so I don't get jabbed again. So again, really, classically used, I should say, for spoke wheels, where we put a wheel right in here and then, then adjust the spokes, the tension on the spokes. The spokes. When a spoke is a spoke. And little John Cougar there for you folks. And so that's how we use that. So we're going to take these ends off, back these out to give us a little bit more room. We'll load this up on the tire or the tire up on this, depending on how you look at it. And we'll get it up here and see how it's balanced. All right, a couple things about the motorcycle wheel itself. Not all tires have this, but if the tire has a marking, and usually it's a yellow circle, that indicates the location that they want you to put it relative to the valve. So as you can see, I got this one lined up. Not all tires have that, and I don't know why, but if they don't have it, I'm not aware of any other marking mechanism on those tires, like a little arrow that's molded into it. There's arrows molded into this one, for example, all over the place. Who the hell knows? And I think what the arrows tell you is where the wear bars are. But, it doesn't really matter at this point because it's a brand new tire. So you want to put any marking like that up against, or I should say in line with the valve. The other thing you want to pay attention to, of course, is the arrow. Now, even if you have this is the direction of rotation arrow. Even if you have a shop put these on, you want to double check before you pick it up. You know, we're all human, we make mistakes. And so we want to make sure that this is set up properly. Now, this is the drive side, which actually goes the other way. So this is the way it would sit on the bike. And of course, the arrow is in a clockwise motion relative to that. So of course, this is the brake side, which is on the right side, so we're good. Another thing we want to check is the bearings. As soon as I take a tire or a wheel, I should say, off a bike, first thing I do is reach in and check the bearings, because if we have bearing problems, we're going to have other problems. Lastly, what we want to do is we certainly want to remove other weights. We're going to pop this one off here in a minute. And also, if the wheel has any adjunct features that need to be installed, like, for example, let's say something stayed behind on the bike, like this possibly could. This is the drive ice spider, whatever you call it, for the, it has the dampers in there. Some of these bikes have something like this, similar. Make sure it's on the wheel when you're balancing it. You want to set the wheel up on the balancer in the exact situation that it will be present on the motorcycle to get an accurate balancing. Okay, so let's load it up and give it a shot. Actually, again, I'm premature. We want to level this thing first. We want to make sure it's level. So we're going to put a little level on it, and we can use the legs to adjust out, down, or, you know, or in, up or in, whatever you want to call it. Get this thing level. We want it to be fairly level when we do our testing. All right, so we got it pretty close both ways. Yeah, pretty much dead nuts. So that's good. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact, but the closer the better. So the only exception to what I said before, by making sure everything's installed in the wheel, would be is if it actually gets in the way of the cone, you know, the mounting cone. This one does not. So if you had something that actually gets in the way and you cannot fit the cone up into the bearing, then naturally you'd have to remove that and balance it without it. But you know, we want to try to make sure we have everything loaded up as if it's sitting on the bike itself. So, and all I do is I put these cones in and push them up against the bearing. Kind of get it close, give it a little twist so it's pushing up against the bearing. And then good. You want to make sure you don't have any significant movement on these, because if you do, it's not going to balance up right. So you just want to make sure you don't have any movement on them, or, you know, you just want to make sure they're snug in there. Then you want to give these guys a nice tightening, and then you're ready. Except for all the crap on my hands. Why is everything just a tiny bit out of my reach? Lord have mercy. Okay, well, wonders never cease. I actually got it up. So now she's ready to go. Now, so what I normally do is I give her a little spin, see where she sits. That weight is off. I did remove that weight. And then see where she wants to go. Sometimes it'll actually turn on the wheel bearings more than it will on these guys right here. It doesn't matter. You can kind of get a feel for how this thing works by just using it enough times, and you get a pattern how it typically responds to a wheel. So what I do is I just kind of do it until I feel that I'm really on the lowest or the heaviest point of the tire, because naturally there's a certain amount of resistance, some friction in the bearings, and it's not going to exactly be, it's going to try to get down there, especially if it isn't very far off to start with. And it, you know, the lowest part of this tire, as you can see, it stopped here. It actually may be over here because it was trying to come back to it, or the other way depending on how it spins. So what I do with that is I go back the other way and then just see what it wants to do. And you can see now it's going to come back. And then what we do is I'm going to go the other way again, and then just kind of get an idea of what it wants to do. And we'll do it one more time this way. All right, so I'm fairly confident that the heavy part of this wheel is right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that with a piece of tape just on the sidewall, just to remind me that it's a heavy spot. And then I want to actually put a little weight where it's lighter on the other side. Sometimes what I'll do is, depending on how it reacts, I'll put a weight here and here. So for example, if this is heavy, sometimes it'll need like a 1/4 ounce here, 1/4 ounce there, because it doesn't necessarily want to play nice in balancing without doing something like that. But let's just see how it works when we put one opposite of the heavy spot. All right, so when it comes to tire weights, we want to try it before we buy it. So before I take the sticky goo off and waste a weight, take two. Before I take the sticky goo off and do it that way, I'm just going to take a weight and I'm going to tape it to the rim. I'm going to give it a rim job this way, and then we'll see where we're at. Now what I like to do at this point is just kind of hold it between the 2 points and see what it wants to do. Ultimately, when you think about it on a static balancer, you really want to divide this into 4 1/4 sections, like 4 pieces of a pie, because if we are out of balance in one vector or one direction, 90 degrees to that direction, if we are countering that and it does not want to turn, then technically we have eliminated that balance, or imbalance I should say, because that would be that would apply the most forces to our imbalance, would be to have this at a 90-degree angle to the vertical. So horizontal to vertical, if we have an imbalance of weight like we did before, and this would be the heavier one down here, okay? And then we can just kind of turn it this way, and then we'll see what it wants to do. Give it a push. If it continues to want to go toward that heavy side, and you can see that it is sort of wanting to do that now, but how far does it actually go? So does it actually go down there? Because really what you're doing is you're creating 2 heavy spots in the tire, but it's balancing the overall weight of the tire. Because remember, when you have a spinning force, it's not like you have a bump in the tire or something where it's going to go thump, thump, thump. This is going to average itself out at speed, because we're countering the heavy spot with another heavy spot, basically. So I'm going to call that good. I'm going to say a 1/4 ounce is going to be okay for this. And as I said in my intro, I've done this this way many, many, many times on all sorts of motorcycle tires. And never had a problemo. And I've run them up quite high in the, not high triple digits, but certainly cracking the ton, and had no vibrations or anything like that. So I'm going to call a 1/4 ounce good, especially on this rig, where it rarely sees 65 miles an hour pulling a sidecar, so we're going to be good. I've moved my tape mark over to where I'm going to put the weight on so I don't lose my spot. You can use a grease pencil, whatever you want. Now, I like to put the weights as close to the center of the rim, width-wise as possible. Sometimes you can't do that because of features on the rims, and I'm using some brake clean just to clean up this area. I'm not going to use this weight. I'm going to take another weight and just put the, but in case this one fell off, I have a mark, and just put that one on in its place. Get it good and clean, and then you can stick it on. Now sometimes there's some features of the rim, like little stampings, like you see the letters, the raised letters here. If they were on the spot where I want to put the weight, I likely would not put the weight there, because I would be thinking that the irregularity in the surface is probably going to give us some problems. So we're going to take this little cover off, that, the shit that prevents it from getting screwy, the gooey screwy, and put it right back where it belongs and stick her on, and we'll be good. These I buy some good quality weights when I buy them. These are MTP. I don't know, what that brand is relative to other ones. They're 7 grams or 1/4 ounce, and they seem to work pretty good for generalized or universal one. You can see that I had a couple of weights here at one time on a previous tire install. There's some goo, and I put 2 of them on in that case. So every tire is a little different. Now I will save the clip-on one that came off for a future application of either this wheel or another one. But yeah, I'm liking this. This is okay. As long as, you know, as long as you can balance this thing out and it doesn't want to take off on you, you know, significantly. Like, it's going to rotate a little bit, but it's not going to go like haywire on you. It's going to stop and pretty much be across from where you were starting before. That's what you want, because otherwise, you know, we're dealing with a situation that a tire can be out of balance or it's misbalanced. Now, finally, you can have situations, and I have them happen once in a while. You know, I do my own tires, and I do some customer tires, especially on the older vintage stuff where people don't want to bring them to motorcycle shops specifically, because I do have some Nomar tire brand tools. So anyway, I can do them pretty efficiently as far as lack of damage, but not time. It takes me some time to do it. But anyway, what you find sometimes, you throw a tire on and it doesn't need any balancing at all. You put it on there and it behaves normally, and it's cooperative, and that's fine. It happens. Sometimes when you line the dot up, because that's how they figure it out at the factory, they say, well, this is the heaviest spot of the tire. What they want you to, now it makes sense that if you had a heavier spot of the tire, why not put it opposite the possible heavier spot of the rim? But there's really no way to know that, because just because the valve is here doesn't mean that it's going to be the heaviest spot in the rim. You know, what you want to do is you want to put the 2 heaviest spots together. That way you eliminate that variable. And it's a lot easier to set a tire up when you know you have a spot that here's the heaviest spot of the tire, here's the heaviest spot of the rim. Now we can work around those 2 and counterbalance or counter those balancing or imbalancing forces. So I think theoretically that's why it's done. That's the story I'm sticking to, but it works good for me. So like I said, it may not be the right way, but it's the way I do it. So that's it in a nutshell. Static balancer, again, may not be the right way. It's the way I do it. Choose to do it the way you choose to do it. So read the instructions, of course, whatever device you get, go online, look at some YouTube videos, and figure out how you want to do it. Till next time, speaking of YouTube, we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.